here. So I have a lot of slides to get through. I want to give you guys as much value as possible. What I'd like you guys to walk away with is, regardless of the size of company you are, regardless of the stage you're at, whether you're a PE investor, whether you're a founder, I want you to walk away with a strategic, scientific approach in terms of how you think about your marketing. And so how we're going to do that is first identifying the starting point. So every company has a unique marketing puzzle based on where they are, based on their situation. And the way we think about it is there's 5 key stages. Number 1, it's a new go-to-market. You've invested a limited amount into marketing, or it's founder-led, there's not really a marketing person. Marketing contribution to pipeline is about 0%. Number 2, it's a sales-led organization. A lot of B2B SaaS companies look like this. And sales is the primary revenue driver. Marketing plays a support role, and likely contribution to pipeline is less than 10%. Third is a nascent marketing organization that is having some type of contribution, roughly in that 10 to 15-ish% range, sometimes 20%. But really, marketing team is 1 to 3 people, and they're doing some activities, but not really driving enough demand. Fourth is some marketing impact. This is an organization that has some level of maturity. They're investing in demand gen, they're investing in content, but they really haven't gotten to a full level of sophistication. But they're driving enough pipeline, maybe around that 20 to 25% mark. And then the last one, which is very rare that we see, is a sophisticated marketing organization, someone that's driving 25 to 50% plus of the pipeline that you're seeing in a particular company. And so if you were to plot these stages in a continuum of maturity, where you look at how much marketing dollars are being invested on the x-axis and how much pipeline is being generated on the y-axis, you can literally look at every company in this room and plot it as a scatter plot, and you would find that most companies fall between stage 2 and stage 4. And I would argue most companies are likely around stage 2. And very rarely, if you're a PE investor, out of all the portfolio companies that you have, maybe 1 or 2 fit into that sophisticated marketing category, where there is a very mature CMO in place, they have a good team in place, they're driving a significant amount of pipeline. And so the question is, how do we get to sophistication? And our model about thinking about this is, it's almost like building a pyramid brick by brick, and there are 5 layers. So layer 1 is your foundational elements. This is knowing the business context, having historical data, having funnel efficiency, having market or segmentation analysis in place, having your branding sorted out. Level 2 is your infrastructure. This is where you have your product marketing, positioning, messaging, you have your website in place, you have your tech stack, and you have your revenue operations somewhat in order, where you have data about all the different marketing activities that you're investing into. Third is the planning stage, and this is really where enterprise value is created. So this is where you'd have to sort out, what is your marketing strategy? What are the demand gen programs or channels and campaigns that you're investing in? What is the content you require across all stages of the buyer journey? And where are you going to prioritize your marketing efforts with the limited dollars that you have? Fourth is your team and budget, and that's your resourcing layer. So you want to figure out, okay, we have all these ideas that we want to implement. Who's going to work on it, and how much money is it going to cost us? And so this is the part that usually gets missed, is we want to grow faster, but our marketing team is still 3 people. And then the last piece is what we ultimately want, which is revenue growth, right? Everybody in this room wants to grow faster. But in order to get there, we have to kind of build these layers brick by brick. Many times we'll find a company that doesn't have anything built out in layers 1 and 2, but they want to drive the outcome of revenue growth. And in that case, it's very unlikely that you're actually going to be able to do it in a quarter, because you don't have some of the fundamental elements in place. And so that's what we call an at-risk company, right? If you think about your particular organization, you might find that you're good in 5 out of the rest of the boxes that are available, and then the rest you actually have no level of maturity. And so what ends up happening is you might have a decent website, you might be doing some blog posts, but you really don't have a marketing strategy. You don't actually have revenue operations in place, so you can look at your full funnel metrics and say, we spend this much money on marketing today, here's the ROI on close 1 revenue. You don't actually have a plan in terms of how much budget you need to hit your revenue targets for the year, and you don't have the team in place. And so it's very unlikely, regardless of what budgets you've set or what revenue projections you've set for the year, it's very unlikely that you're actually going to hit those numbers. And so the right approach is to start on the bottom left and snake your way through to the top of the pyramid and build this brick by brick. And the problem is, in most cases, there's a ton of urgency to get through these layers as quickly as possible. I've seen a ton of founders or revenue leaders go through, for example, a 6-month rebranding exercise, or launching a new website from scratch, or switching your CRM from Pipedrive to Salesforce or HubSpot to Pardot, and meanwhile, revenue growth is not happening, right? And so that's one of the biggest mistakes. It's actually one of the reasons why VPs of marketing get fired all the time, is because they're taking too long in those first 2 layers. But the idea is that as you move through those layers, you're also increasing your maturity. So the more of those bricks in the pyramid that you've filled out, the higher your contribution to pipeline increases, and it actually increases at an exponential scale. So if you have the right team in place, you're far more likely to be able to execute on the roadmaps and therefore generate more pipeline. And so we want to get to that far right section of this chart, and in certain situations where the urgency is high, we want to get there as quickly as possible. So there's 4 scenarios where the urgency is through the roof. Number 1 is if you're a PE investor and you have a new acquisition that you've made, ramping up marketing in the first 100 days, especially when marketing is core to the investment thesis. If it's a market where there's a good amount of TAM available, or there is a high velocity model, you want marketing to play a big role in delivering on those growth targets. Number 2 is if you're a founder and you're prepping for sale, you may have some marketing activities happening, but you don't have enough data to explain the marketing efficiency. You don't have enough data to say this is the potential that we can capture if we have more investment. And so having that data in place helps you land more strategic or financial investors. Third is an M&A platform where some of our largest clients, they're doing about 500 to 800 million in revenue. They're buying a couple of companies a quarter, and integrating those companies as quickly as possible with the right type of strategy is critical. And so you need to be able to do that really quickly. And then the last is a period of transition where you may have fired your VP of marketing recently, or you don't have a CMO in place yet and you're thinking about investing there, or you're changing your strategy. Maybe you were sales-led and you're switching to a product-led model. We did that with TrackVia in the crowd. And so in those cases, you want to change how you think about marketing and how you invest in your marketing efforts. And in order to meet the urgency there, you kind of have to focus on the top 3 layers, and you need to get through the bottom 2 layers as quickly as possible. And so almost thinking about the bottom 2 layers as like an MVP or a good enough stage. What is a good enough website for you to focus on demand gen? What is a good enough brand for you to focus on demand gen? What is a good enough CRM for you to focus on demand gen? If you can do those things and get it to a good enough spot, the real value is created when you have predictable revenue being generated by marketing, and you're actually focusing on those programs instead of the infrastructure work. And so how we think about marketing is a 5-step process. It's super clean and clear, and any company can really follow this regardless of stage. In fact, in your package, my book was included there, and this is really the 5-step process that's in there. So number 1 is you want to build the right strategy depending on your business model and your context. Number 2, you want to look at your data ops and analysis and get as many insights that you can to build your marketing engine. Third is you want to build your roadmaps for demand gen and content. Fourth is you want to figure out the right team and org structure. And the last piece is figuring out your budgeting and financials to make sure marketing has the right support it needs to scale. And so we're going to go through all those steps really quickly, and I've simplified it because we only have 20 minutes to get through this whole thing. So number 1, building the right strategy. Depending on the context of the company, you will focus on different marketing channels, campaigns, and programs. So on the left side here, you have a low ACV, high TAM type of company. In that case, the company may need to focus on paid social, paid search, and SEO as its core drivers of pipeline generation from marketing. And on the flip side, enterprise B2B companies where your average deal size, let's say, is over $300,000, you need to focus on account-based marketing, you need to do a ton of sales enablement, and you got to focus on customer marketing because there's a lot of cross-sell, upsell opportunities available to you. At the same time, you want to map your marketing efforts to the biggest growth opportunities. And oftentimes, this is what's in the investment thesis when somebody's investing in you, right? So if you're a low ACV, high TAM business, that might look like increasing your website traffic. You might need to increase your free trial to paid conversion rates. You might have a payments solution that lets you capture part of your transaction volume. And so mapping your marketing efforts to make sure you're delivering on those becomes pivotal. On the flip side, if you're an enterprise B2B company, well, you're going to cross-sell to your existing base. You might have 100 or 200 dream accounts that you are like, this is exactly who we sell to. These average deal sizes are over $1 million. So you need to do one-to-one marketing to those accounts. And then you might be focusing on pricing increases, and that involves a ton of product marketing and customer marketing to showcase the value. And so based on your business model, you can look at all the different functions of marketing, and I've listed 8 here. There are technically more, but for the most part, you could look at every company through this matrix and say which of these strategies is relevant to this particular organization. So if you're a low ACV company, paid media and SEO becomes super important to what you do. ABM is not important, right? So there's no need to build a list of dream accounts because your deal sizes are too small. And if you focus on one-to-one marketing, your CAC would be way too high. Conversely, if you're selling a $300,000 plus deal, SEO is not that relevant. If you're targeting the 500 biggest hospitals in the country, odds are they're not likely searching for you on Google on how do hospitals run better, right? So if you're taking on an SEO solution to do that, likely it's not going to work. And so looking at this matrix in your business, you want to figure out which one is most relevant to us and then build your marketing strategy against that. So this is an oversimplification, but you want to look at your overall budget and say, how do our marketing funds split out across these activities? How much are we putting into paid media? How much is going into content? How much goes into customer marketing? Or maybe we have a partner network. How much of it goes into ABM? And then you want to allocate your budget and people accordingly to that overall breakdown. And this is more of a directional idea, but as we get deeper into the data, we actually have metrics that back these decisions. Number two, there's data analysis, which is connected. And so here you want to start with figuring out at every stage of the funnel, what are our conversion rates? So from the time a lead comes in at the top of the funnel, at what rate do they become a qualified lead? From there, at what percentage of them actually become a sales qualified lead or an opportunity inside of our pipeline? Are there certain types of leads that sales is rejecting? Maybe we qualify them, sales talks to them, and they're really not ready to buy. And then out of the people that do become qualified, what percentage of them actually reach close won data? When we meet companies, it's very rare for us to find a company that has this full funnel tracking built across the board. They may have a dashboard where they can say, hey, on a monthly basis, this is how many SQLs we have, but they may not have cohort analysis, they may not have channel analysis, they don't have analysis based on certain campaigns and programs. And so that's really what you want to build out. And there's a very particular reason why. So in this example, lead to MQL percentage is 14%, MQL to SQL is 18%, and SQL to close is 33%. If we were to follow that from the top of the funnel to the bottom, the conversion rates are about 6% overall. And this gives us a pretty key piece of information, which is it tells you how much can we spend at the top of the funnel to acquire a lead. So in this case, to break even at month 12, assuming our payback period that we want to aim for is 12 months, we can spend about $205. And if we're above that number, we know we need to scale down certain marketing efforts. If we're under that number, we likely have more room to spend. And so you want to take that baseline and you want to apply it to all the different channels that you're applying to. So similar to the way in this space we're looking at our overall conversion rates, you want to do this at a channel level, and you'll find that some channels are more efficient than others. So if you meet somebody at a trade show and you build a good relationship, their close rate might be higher than someone that comes in inbound online. But you might find that the volume from inbound online is higher, and so you have enough conversion rates to justify the spend there. And so you want to compare your actual cost per lead against your acceptable cost per lead to see which channels are better than others. And what you're going to find is you're inefficient in some and really efficient in others, and you want to go through almost a reallocation and efficiency exercise to move budget around. And this is something that if you were just to do this part in your marketing today, you could likely find another 10, 20, 30% in pipeline through just reallocation. You don't have to increase budget. There's no need for an investment committee. You could just do this and make your marketing more efficient. Similarly, you want to do this at a campaign and program level. So in this example, this is a company that we looked at, fairly large business, 30 million. They were investing a ton into paid media. And it's kind of hard to read, but there's one campaign that they're spending $83,000 on, and they're getting 38 cents on the dollar back for that campaign. And then there's another campaign that they're spending only $8,000, and they're getting $5 back for every dollar that they invest there. So you can see there's a huge mismatch in the campaigns that they're spending way more on. If they were to move that 80,000 from this campaign to that campaign, likely it won't be maybe 5 to 1, but it could be 2 to 1, which is significantly better than they're getting at the moment. And so once you have some of that data and you've gone through the reallocation exercise, you want to start focusing on, okay, what are the net new programs or channels and campaigns that we want to invest in? What are some additional things that we can do? Because historical analysis will only get you so far, especially if you're earlier on. You may not have that much historical analysis to begin with. And so how do you think about building out the right programs? Step one is mapping out your customer journey through very basic stages. So awareness, knowledge, consideration. Consideration is you're ready to buy today. Awareness is you're just learning about what we have to offer or maybe some content that we've got. And then you want to layer on swim lanes underneath that, which is hot, warm, cold. And what that tells you is how interested is a party as they move through those stages. So for example, if you're in that top right quadrant, you are very ready to buy and you're very interested in what we are selling. And so you might be looking for example, and my previous company, Wild Apricot, you'd be searching for Wild Apricot membership software. You go on the website, you start a free trial almost immediately, you are in market with us. On the flip side, if you go to the bottom left quadrant, we sold to nonprofits. So as an example, somebody searching there might be looking for 10 ways to increase donations from your nonprofit members. And so us writing that piece of content is very important to get awareness leads at the top of the funnel, but it's not where we should start. And a ton of companies start in the bottom left quadrant when there's a ton of value in the rest of this matrix. And so what you really want to do is you want to start at the top right and work your way backwards to the bottom left. And the reason for that is you want to start with people who are most ready to buy today and build the right campaigns, programs, measurement, show the ROI. You can take that to a board meeting and say, we started with a limited marketing budget, $20,000 a month. On that spend, here is the ROI that we saw. We also see the potential to 2x or 3x that spend. Here's the CAC, here's our payback period. And then from there, you can get more budget. And as you get more budget, you slowly work your way backwards to the bottom left. And so this mistake leads to a lot of companies investing in that bottom left quadrant, and there's not enough pipeline, and a lot of marketing programs get shut down early. So you want to start in that top right to earn that credibility so you have more budget. And you want to think about this for every single campaign, channel, program that you're working on. Similar to the way we would do that with, let's say, paid media, you want to do that for SEO, for product marketing, for sales enablement, customer marketing. Any type of marketing activity should try to work backwards from the highest opportunity. So for example, if you are an enterprise B2B company with 5 product lines, cross-sell, upsell demand is way more important than net new demand from, let's say, a cold prospect that's searching for content on the internet. And so you want to prioritize that cross-sell, upsell demand, and likely your main channel of operating would be email marketing, maybe webinars, and maybe you do some LinkedIn targeting to your ideal customer accounts. And those become the channels that you focus on before you ever go to creating random blog posts. And then as you identify the channels where you want to focus, you want to actually analyze what is the opportunity available to us. Sometimes you'll experiment. So in this company's case, they spent about $24,000 on paid media. They got about 1.59 ROI on that spend. And so that's a pretty good return. And that shows us a payback period that's less than 12 months for sure. And so you can make a business case against that and say, hey, we spent 25, we think we can now spend $50,000 a month. And so let's increase that budget to $600,000 annually. And then if those unit economics hold, then let's scale to the next level, and then the next level after that. Similarly, you want to do this with content. And again, very simplified approach here. Normally this would be a massive spreadsheet, but you would identify the biggest gaps in the buyer journey, and you'd say, hey, the place where we don't seem to have enough content is from MQL to close or SQL to close. Like, we don't have enough case studies. We don't have a great pitch deck. Our sales reps are just making up one-pagers, and the messaging is way off on all of these. And so we need more assets at that stage of the journey to help us convert more prospects. And so as you identify those, that's the content that needs to be prioritized instead of more of an ad hoc approach. Number 4 is you want to look at team and org structure. And so again, in this case, depends on your context, right? So I've listed 3 types of marketing orgs. There's more, and I have an appendix here, so I'll share the slides after. But phase 1 would be an MVP marketing organization where you're very fresh and new on the marketing side and you're starting to get pipeline rolling. In this case, you likely have some type of a marketing director. It might be their first marketing director type of role, but they have some skills on demand gen, some content skills, and they're probably analytical. And they would likely have 1 or 2 people working underneath them, and then the rest is getting outsourced to some freelancers. And their entire job is to run experiments to validate whether or not marketing can deliver value so that you can slowly scale up your spend. Phase 3, and I skipped phase 2 because there's a step in between, but phase 3 would be a VP of marketing, and this is roughly around, if you're 10 to 30-ish million in revenue, your marketing org likely looks something like this. A VP of marketing that has a few directors under them for demand gen, for marketing ops, for content, and then they have 1 or 2 direct reports underneath those people as well. And in this case, this company's job is to usually a single product line focus or maybe 1 or 2 product lines, and they're primarily either 1 or 2 channels that are driving really most of the marketing pipeline. And then phase 5 is you have multiple product lines. This is some of our larger organizations. We have one client that has over 120 people on their marketing team because they have like 30 product lines. And so you want to have region-specific teams, product line-specific teams, and then you might have shared services teams that help all the product lines across the board. So depending on where you are, which channels are applicable to you, what your data looks like, where the opportunity is. You want to structure your marketing organization the right way so that you have the right people in the right seats to actually deliver on the opportunities that are available. And then against those plans, you want to have a hiring roadmap. So you might have things that are priority number 1, priority 2 that you need to hire immediately, and then some items that are later on in your roadmap based on the funding. So as you prove out your channels, campaigns, and programs, you might start off with a paid media agency or a marketing director. As they start to deliver, you'll say, oh, this is actually working. We now need more content to scale to paid social. In order to have more content, either we need to hire an agency that can help us with that, or we need in-house talent. So let's go build the business cases for that and get approval. And then the last piece is budgeting and financial. So now you have the right strategy in place, you have the right demand gen roadmap in place, you have your marketing data together, you have your content roadmap. You actually have to have the hiring roadmap in place that helps you figure out who is going to execute on all these plans. But you got to go get the budget from the board or your executive team. And so this is where the math that we did in the funnel analysis stage really helps us. As we understand our acceptable cost per lead, we want to go to finance, go to our investors and say, what are the targets we need to hit for this year? Are we growing by 5 million, by 10 million? And then against that, what are our conversion rates? How many deals do we need? How many deals do we need from new prospects? How many deals do we need from existing? What are our conversion rates through the funnel? And then how many MQLs do we need to generate the pipeline to be able to hit that revenue number? And then MQLs aren't free, right? It's kind of hard to believe, but MQLs aren't free and they need investment. And so if we need a certain number of MQLs, do we have the right amount of marketing budget to actually fund those MQLs? Or are we severely underfunded? So for example, if you need to generate $10 million in pipeline, and in order to get there, your marketing budget that's needed is actually $2 million, but your marketing team currently has a budget of $1.2 million, you have an $800,000 deficit. So very likely that you're gonna miss your targets. And so you gotta build that story to say, hey, we need $800,000 more dollars. Here's where we're gonna invest it. Here's the ROI. Here's how long it'll take us to generate that ROI. And here's the horizon for the investment as well. And then as you look at those additional budget investments, you kind of want to space it out to say, hey, we need to improve our marketing data tracking. We will do that in Q1 and Q2. We need to make some hires. We need some time to onboard those people at the same time so they'll really start to make an impact in Q3 or Q4. We need to improve our demand gen programs. That will start to show up in Q2, Q3. And then by Q4, we can have another investment committee meeting to actually fund marketing again for the 2023 cycle. And the end goal of all of this is to be scientific about marketing. One of the reasons why sales gets way more budget is that it's way easier to quantify. I get asked this by CEOs all the time is, well, should I hire another sales rep or should I fund marketing? And this constant trade-off is being made in their heads because I can say every time I hire a rep, they'll make this many calls and they'll get this many deals in the pipeline, whereas it's harder to say that with marketing, right? So the job of the marketing leader, and this is why hiring the right marketing leader is super important, is to bring this data to the table to you as a CEO or to you as the investor to make those decisions easy where you actually have comparables. And marketing should be either improving the close rates at every stage of the funnel, or it should be improving the amount of pipeline you have at every stage. So between the quantity and the quality, you're drastically improving the ROI on your marketing and sales dollars, and your CAC should come down over time. So I'll stop there. I have a ton more slides, but I can use those to address questions just so that we're on the clock here.
And Shiv, how do you quickly, when you go in with one of the private equity groups with a new company, how do you even approach the first 100 days?
Yeah, great question. So the streams that we talked about, which is your strategy, your data ops and reporting, demand gen, content, and budgeting, we try to zip through that in about 3 to 4 months. And the idea is that we want to be able to understand the data and the demand gen roadmaps and come back with a full strategy and plan that the team can start executing on within those 3 to 4 months. And without us, a company that has an internal team of let's say more junior marketers or even a marketing director, they could take a lot longer to figure that out, but urgency is the key, right? So we're bringing a team of 12 people and working with the CEO or the revenue leader and the marketing leaders to build out those plans. And then from there, once those plans are built, it's about execution. And so sometimes we support execution, sometimes we'll hand off to a partner that is skilled in a particular area, let's say content creation or paid media, and then other times we're training the internal team to be able to execute that themselves.
Hey, Shiv.
Where am I looking?
Shiv,
Hi.
question regarding the total lead funnel that you're referring to up on these slides with regards to MQLs. How does that pertain to the total breakdown that the marketing team should be responsible for MQLs for a product-led company versus inside sales, that sales model where they're outbounding and creating that lead?
Yeah, so one of the biggest problems is that these functions are siloed. So marketing is told, here's your lead commit or a lead target that you need to hit. And then inside sales is told, this is your quota. And then customer success is told, this is your upsell target, right? And really you want to think about revenue end to end. I think the phase that we're moving to more and more now is everybody owns revenue. Marketing owns revenue. It doesn't really matter how many leads you generated. It matters if those leads became qualified pipeline and they actually closed. If something became qualified pipeline even, but let's say it gets to close lost because it's too expensive or they're a bad fit for another reason that was discovered later, marketing needs that information so that they can improve their program so that they're not finding those same types of prospects later. You can take it a step further. We talked about churn a bunch. Like, what if there's certain verticals that actually do get to close one, but then churn 3 months later or churn 6 months later? Was that really a great fit even though you got it to close one, right? So that end-to-end revenue understanding, and that's why revenue operations is now the thing. It's not marketing ops and sales ops, because you need that end-to-end understanding of your customer, the segments that really are an ideal fit for you, who are your NPS promoters, who have the best net revenue retention, and you want to feed that into your demand gen. If your demand gen doesn't understand that, you're going to get a ton of garbage leads that don't convert. It's better to get 100 leads that close 10 deals than get 1,000 leads that close 5 deals, right?
Yeah, I understand the efficacy of the lead itself, but when you're setting targets from an annual perspective and you're working with your VP marketing or whatever, generally speaking, they're going to ask, well, what is sales going to contribute to this? Even if you have a CRO that's in charge of it, they're responsible for the total number, but as you look down to your channels, you're still going to create annual targets for your channel, and so there needs to be lead attribution and targets set for that. So I was just curious, from a percent breakdown, 60, 40, 70, 30, and then the secondary question, do you see it inside sales sitting inside marketing then?
Yeah, I would. So I'm going to reflect back the question. So you're saying what should be the breakdown between sales that's closing deals and marketing that's closing deals?
Not closing.
Yeah.
From a lead gen
standpoint.
So if there's 100 leads that what company's looking to generate for the month,
yeah.
Inside sales is a target of creating 60% of them, or whatever the percentage is, versus marketing led.
Yes.
Going out doing paid social, organic social, events, etc.
Okay, so I think that really depends on the model that you're operating in. If you are an enterprise B2B company, likely marketing contribution around the 20-ish% mark for lead gen is a good number. Whereas if you're more of a large TAM, low ACV type of model, you'd want that number to be north of 50%. So you really have to diagnose the splits based on your model and then identify what does good look like and then which channels need to contribute how much to actually be able to get there. So that would be context dependent. Yeah.
Good. Okay. You going to get some, I'm coming back to you. Yeah. Ed, are you ready to tell very quickly the slide that you sent me this morning? Sorry, you didn't know I was going to do this.
No, we are a customer of How to SaaS, and before we went to sign up with them, one of the pieces of research we came across was from McKinsey that they did the research in 2020 about the changing in the B2B marketplace. And some of the things we saw, and I had to write this down, was as far as identifying new software, 31% said they wanted to do that in person, 48% remote, and 22% self-service. What was really interesting as far as ordering, 36% said they would do self-service and another 44% said they would do remote. And only 20% of the people said they wanted to talk to a sales rep in person. So, we looked at this and said this is becoming more like the B2C marketplace, the B2B. So we went ahead with How to SaaS, and we're in the process of moving fully to a product-led growth strategy of the market. Our average ACV is around $40,000 to our customers. So we're in that lower end of the bracket, so that's where we are. But I just heard a bunch of people say about their problems that they wanted to build an enterprise Salesforce team, and I'm like, you ought to look at this and talk to How to SaaS before you go down that road, because there might be a different answer. And just one last quick, we hired an enterprise sales team. I hired 11 reps. I set up BDRs. We had one of our reps made 12,000 contacts in a year, didn't close a single deal. We went and looked, and 89% of all of our deals we've ever done have been inbound to us over the life of the company. So that's one of the things why we went to the PLG. Our biggest competitor is 10 times our size. They hired 40 new sales reps to go after the market and do outbound. Inside of a year, they dropped that back to 5. And that was a big portfolio company invested by Vista. So, you know, a company that knows software really well made that mistake. So I just think how to SaaS and whether you want to do product-led growth is really important analysis that you do early on in your sales cycle.
Oh, this is great stuff, man. And I'm telling you, from an IBM sales rep that
Thank
started
you,
my
Ed.
career in enterprise sales, one-to-one, this is a tragedy to me, to be an old guy that can't go out and write the customer-tailored sales call. Does anybody like to meet one-on-one with your client and draw on a yellow pad? This is a tragedy, but it is. You're my competition at IBM. But listen, y'all, it has changed. If you're enterprise, you are still selling now. I mean, you're about to start selling this way, so awesome. Okay, Ali.
Hey Shiv, with the change with Apple's privacy and Facebook's privacy policies, what are you seeing as far as changes in reliability of MQLs coming from paid ads and social and all of that?
Not a huge drop in the B2B space. So coming back to that framework where you're working your way backwards, right? And I'll just jump back here. If you're thinking about a particular channel that's relevant to B2B, Facebook ads are usually much further down the list of prioritization. You can do some retargeting, and that's where the Facebook privacy policy and Apple's privacy policy would come into play. But really, your channels that you should focus on are usually LinkedIn, Google, your content, ABM, and things like that. And so not a huge drop. There are certain situations where that's happened, but you can use data aggregators and data amplification to improve your targeting on Facebook too, so there are ways to hedge against that.
So with regards to new leads that come in, do you think that the sales development rep should be in the marketing department or the sales department? I imagine probably marketing, but I'm curious to get your insight on SDRs.
Yeah, we've seen both models. Regardless of where they live, I think the most important thing is actually marketing communicating with that function to constantly make sure that the leads that they're bringing in are high quality. So whether it's in the same function and you're looking at sales accepted leads as your actual metric, or you're constantly pinging your SDR leader to say, are these good leads? Give me that feedback. And we have to take that feedback seriously. I think one of the things that historically has happened with marketing is marketing brings in leads and then kind of washes its hands clean. And that's kind of what we want to avoid. We want to really focus on the quality.
All right, we got time for one more. Anybody got a question? Okay, on the front.
Dealing with channel halo effect and being able to measure that. So the graph you put up that showed $80,000 spent with that return.
Mm-hmm.
Are you measuring how much that potentially influenced the other channels?
Good question. It depends on the attribution models that you're looking at. So if you're looking at more of a first touch or a simpler attribution model, and in certain businesses that's good enough, and so you would just use that. But if, let's say, you have a more complicated sale, there could be an influence from a channel that's not showing up in that spreadsheet from a first touch basis, and so you'd want to look at weighted attribution. That being said, I would say most companies, I'd say 90% of companies don't need to go to the path of a heavily weighted attribution model that's super complex. We've seen a ton of B2B companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and maybe 6 months of their time into weighted attribution when they're not generating more pipeline. So you could have the best analytics about certain channels and maybe you could give them 0.2 credit here and 0.5 credit there. But if you're not driving more pipeline, it really doesn't matter. You just have really good reports. And so I think most B2B companies need to be focused on the campaigns themselves and use something that's good enough. Unless you have, like, I think one of the situations where that is actually relevant is really large M&A platforms where you have multiple product lines and it's going to the same corporate site. You need some form of multi-touch. So, saying any others?
Awesome. Okay, we got one more. Mark.
Yeah, I'm just curious, for your personal preference, I know they can all work.
Yeah.
Marketing automation platforms, when you pick one, you're committed, change, your personal preference. When we're on Salesforce, Pardot, and I always assume the graph
That's great.
is greener, HubSpot's got to be better because we can't figure out certain things. Do you have a personal preference? If
No.
you said,
Not at all. I would say agnostic. Whatever you're with is good enough, unless it is a huge hindrance to your growth. which is very unlikely, there's feature parity across the board, like Pardot and HubSpot and Marketo. I think Marketo is more for enterprise, so that there's an argument to be made that at some point, if you're a $1 billion company or something, you may want to be on Marketo. But in general, going through that type of an infrastructure project, it just kills your growth and not really worth it. And there's one instance where it's actually somewhat relevant is M&A platform companies where multiple businesses are being brought together and they're on different instances of either Salesforce, or one company's on Pardot, another one's on HubSpot, and so you do need to integrate systems together, but in most cases I would avoid that.
Shiv, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.